Welcome to Cosmic Whispers, where cosmic mysteries come alive. Your journey beyond the stars begins now. In the quiet corners of our world, an unprecedented catastrophe is unfolding. Insects, the small creatures that have dominated Earth's terrestrial ecosystems for over 400 million years, are disappearing at an alarming rate. Their decline remains largely unnoticed by the general public, yet scientists across the globe are increasingly sounding urgent alarms. This is what researchers now call the insect apocalypse, and its implications stretch far beyond the tiny bodies of the creatures themselves. Recent studies published in the journal Biological Conservation suggest that over 40% of insect species are threatened with extinction over the next few decades. More alarmingly, the total biomass of insects is declining at an estimated rate of 2.5% annually, a seemingly small number that compounds into devastating losses. If this trend continues unabated, we could witness the disappearance of insects within a century. To understand the magnitude of this crisis, we must first comprehend what's at stake. Insects make up more than half of all known living organisms on our planet. They've survived all 5 mass extinction events, including the one that wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. From the microscopic soil dwellers breaking down organic matter to the pollinators facilitating plant reproduction, these tiny creatures form the backbone of terrestrial ecosystems. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Right now, Cosmic Whispers is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you enjoy unraveling the mysteries of the universe, hit subscribe. It's free and it helps us grow this community together. The evidence for insect decline comes from multiple sources across different continents. A 2017 study in Germany revealed a 76% decline in flying insect biomass across 63 nature protection areas over just 27 years. In Puerto Rico, researchers documented a 60% reduction in insect biomass in a tropical forest between 1976 and 2013, alongside parallel declines in insectivorous birds, lizards, and frogs. Similar patterns have emerged from studies in the United Kingdom, Denmark, and North America. What makes this silent extinction particularly concerning is that insects serve as both indicators and engineers of ecosystem health. When they begin to disappear, it signals fundamental problems with the environment, problems that will inevitably affect humans. The loss of insects represents not just the disappearance of fascinating creatures with complex behaviors and evolutionary histories spanning hundreds of millions of years, but the unraveling of ecological networks that sustain all life on Earth, including our own. Unlike charismatic megafauna such as pandas or tigers, insects rarely capture public attention or conservation. Their small size and alien appearance often fail to evoke the sympathy directed toward more relatable vertebrates. Yet their ecological importance vastly outweighs many of the species we more readily fight to protect. As renowned entomologist E.O. Wilson once noted, if insects were to disappear, the environment would collapse into chaos. As we journey deeper into this silent crisis, we'll examine the multiple, interacting causes driving insect declines worldwide. We'll explore how agricultural intensification, habitat loss, climate change, introduced species, and widespread pollution are creating a perfect storm that many insect populations simply cannot weather. Most critically, we'll investigate what this means for the future of our planet and what can be done to reverse the tide before it's too late. To grasp the gravity of insect decline, we must first understand their extraordinary significance. Insects have evolved into an estimated 5 to 10 million species, though only about 1 million have been formally described by science. This biodiversity dwarfs that of all other animal groups combined. From the frigid Arctic tundra to scorching deserts, from mountain peaks to ocean shores, insects have colonized virtually every habitat on Earth except the deep oceans. Their evolutionary success stems from several factors, their small size allowing them to exploit microhabitats, their exoskeletons providing structural support and protection, their metamorphic life cycles enabling different life stages to utilize different resources, and their wings, perhaps their most revolutionary adaptation, granting access to the skies. These advantages have allowed insects to become Earth's predominant terrestrial fauna for over 400 million years. The ecological functions insects perform are both diverse and irreplaceable. As pollinators, they facilitate the reproduction of nearly 85% of all flowering plants, including 75% of the crops humans depend upon. One study published in Nature Communications estimated the economic value of wild insect pollination at over $500 billion annually worldwide. Without insect pollinators like bees, butterflies, and moths, our food systems would collapse and wild plant communities would transform dramatically. Equally, vital is their role in decomposition and nutrient cycling. Insects process dead organic matter, from fallen leaves to animal carcasses, breaking them down and returning nutrients to the soil. Dung beetles alone save the U.S. cattle industry an estimated $380 million annually by rapidly processing livestock waste, reducing pest habitat and recycling nutrients. Without these ecological recyclers, organic material would accumulate, nutrients would remain locked in dead tissues, and soil fertility would decline. Insects also form the foundation of countless food webs. They convert plant material into protein-rich animal tissue, which then becomes food for larger predators. Birds, bats, amphibians, reptiles, and small mammals all depend heavily on insects for sustenance. A single pair of nesting birds might capture thousands of insects daily to feed their growing chicks. When insect populations crash, these predators face starvation or reproductive failure, triggering cascading effects throughout ecosystems. Beyond these primary roles, insects engineer and maintain habitats in ways we're still discovering. Termites. In African savannas create mounds that act as oases of biodiversity. Ants aerate soil and disperse seeds. Aquatic insects filter water and serve as indicators of water quality. Even in death, insects contribute to ecosystem functioning, their bodies providing nutrients in resource-poor environments. The sheer biomass of insects underscores their importance. Despite their small individual size, their collective weight exceeds that of all vertebrates combined. By some estimates, for every human on Earth, there exist 200 million insects. The total number of individual insects alive at any moment approaches 10 quintillion, a 1 followed by 19 zeros. This abundance translates to extraordinary ecological impact. In tropical rainforests, ants alone can comprise up to 4 times more biomass than all vertebrates combined. In temperate forests, the weight of soil arthropods can exceed 1,500 kilograms per hectare, greater than the combined weight of all birds and mammals in those same forests. As we witness alarming declines in these irreplaceable creatures, we must recognize what's at stake, not just the insects themselves, but the fundamental ecological processes they maintain and the countless species that depend on them, including, ultimately, ourselves. The first signs of trouble came from entomologists, the scientists who dedicate their lives to studying insects. These specialists began noticing something troubling. Where once their light traps or sweep nets would collect thousands of specimens, they now gathered only hundreds or dozens. These anecdotal observations, initially dismissed as nostalgia or sampling bias, have since been validated by rigorous scientific evidence from around the world. One of the most compelling early studies emerged from the Krefeld Entomological Society in Germany. These citizen scientists had meticulously collected flying insects in standardized traps across 63 nature reserves since 1989. When researchers analyzed this 27-year dataset in 2017, the results were shocking, a 76% decline in flying insect biomass. What made this study particularly alarming was that these declines occurred within protected areas, places specifically designated to preserve biodiversity. Following this revelation, researchers began examining existing data sets with new urgency. A landmark meta-analysis published in the journal Science in 2019 reviewed 73 historical reports of insect decline, finding that terrestrial insect abundance had fallen by 9% per decade since 1925. Extrapolated globally, This suggests a staggering overall decline of nearly 50% in the past century alone. The evidence isn't limited to Europe. In Puerto Rico's Luquillo rainforest, a comparison of arthropod samples from 1976 and 2013 revealed a 60% reduction in biomass. This decline coincided with a drop in forest temperatures, likely due to climate change. Simultaneously, researchers documented parallel declines in lizards, frogs, and birds that feed on insects, demonstrating how insect losses ripple through food webs. Perhaps most troubling are studies of butterflies and moths, among the best monitored insect groups due to their popularity. In the United Kingdom, long-term monitoring has revealed that 76% of butterfly species have declined in abundance, occurrence, or both since 1976. In the United States, the iconic monarch butterfly has suffered a 95% population reduction since the 1980s. Wild bees show similar patterns. A 2013 comprehensive study of European bee species found that of the 1,953 species assessed, more than half were declining. In North America, multiple native bumblebee species have undergone rapid declines, with some like Franklin's bumblebee, Bombus franklini, likely extinct. These pollinator declines have serious implications for both wild plant communities and agricultural systems. Aquatic insects, critical indicators of freshwater ecosystem health, are similarly affected. A 2020 study published in Science analyzed long-term surveys from streams across Europe and North America, finding that insect abundance in these freshwater habitats has declined by an average of approximately 1 to 2% annually since 1925. What makes these findings particularly concerning is their consistency across diverse taxonomic groups and geographic regions. From dragonflies to dung beetles, from pristine protected areas to agricultural landscapes, declines are occurring nearly everywhere scientists look. Critics occasionally point to increasing abundances of certain adaptable species as evidence against an insect apocalypse. Indeed, some pest species, typically generalists with rapid reproduction rates, may thrive in human-modified environments. However, these exceptions highlight another troubling pattern: ecological homogenization, where specialized species disappear, while a few winners dominate increasingly simplified ecosystems. As monitoring continues and more datasets become available, the evidence grows clearer. We are witnessing a profound erosion of insect diversity and abundance across most taxonomic groups and geographic regions, a trend that shows no signs of abating without significant intervention. The disappearance of insects isn't happening because of a single cause, but rather a complex interplay of multiple pressures, a death by 1,000 cuts scenario where various human activities combine to create hostile conditions for insect survival. Understanding these drivers is crucial for developing effective conservation strategies. Habitat destruction stands as perhaps the most significant factor. As natural landscapes are converted to agriculture, urban development, and infrastructure, insects lose their homes. Nearly 40% of Earth's ice-free land surface is now devoted to agriculture, with an estimated 150 acres of natural habitat destroyed every minute. The remaining natural areas become increasingly fragmented, creating isolated islands, where insect populations become vulnerable to local extinction events with limited possibility of recolonization. Even when habitats remain physically intact, their quality often deteriorates through other human activities. Light pollution from artificial illumination disrupts nocturnal insects' navigation, mating, and feeding behaviors. More than 80% of the world's population now lives under light-polluted skies. Studies show that streetlights can reduce local moth populations by up to 1/3, while also attracting and killing an estimated 100 billion insects annually in Germany alone. Agricultural intensification represents another major threat. Modern industrial farming practices often involve monocultures, vast areas growing a single crop, which eliminate the diverse plant communities many insects need. The widespread removal of hedgerows, field margins, and other non-crop vegetation has eliminated crucial habitat for beneficial insects in agricultural landscapes. Meanwhile, the timing of farming activities, such as mowing or harvesting, often coincides with critical periods in insect life cycles, destroying eggs or larvae before they can complete development. Perhaps most damaging has been the extraordinary increase in pesticide use. Global pesticide production has increased 50-fold since 1950, with approximately 3 million metric tons of pesticides now applied annually worldwide. Modern systemic insecticides like neonicotinoids persist in plant tissues for months or years, contaminating pollen, nectar, and even morning dew. At concentrations as low as parts per billion, these chemicals can impair insect navigation, learning, and reproduction without causing immediate death, effects that traditional pesticide testing often fails to detect. Climate change adds another dimension to this crisis. As temperatures rise, some insects face thermal stress, particularly tropical species already living near their physiological limits. Changing precipitation patterns disrupt the synchronized timing between insects and their host plants or prey. Extreme weather events can cause direct mortality, while gradually shifting climate zones force insects to migrate to maintain suitable conditions, often impossible due to habitat fragmentation or geographic barriers. Biological invasions further complicate matters. Globalized trade and travel have transported insects, pathogens, and predators beyond their natural ranges. The devastating impacts of introduced species like the varroa mite on honeybees or the emerald ash borer on North American forests demonstrate how quickly these invaders can disrupt established ecological relationships. Pollution extends beyond pesticides to include industrial chemicals, heavy metals, pharmaceutical residues, microplastics, and excess nutrients from agricultural runoff and sewage. These contaminants can have subtle yet profound effects on insect development, immunity, and reproductive capacity. What makes this situation particularly dire is that these factors don't operate in isolation, but interact in complex ways, often amplifying each other's impacts. For instance, exposure to certain pesticides can make insects more vulnerable to pathogens or parasites, while climate change may force insects into increasingly degraded habitat fragments. This perfect storm of pressures helps explain why protected areas like the German nature reserves in the Krefeld study still experience dramatic insect declines. Simply setting aside land while necessary isn't sufficient when threats like climate change and airborne pollution transcend boundaries. As insects vanish, their absence triggers ripple effects that cascade through ecosystems, disrupting processes that have evolved over millions of years. These ecological consequences manifest across multiple scales, from soil microhabitats to entire landscapes, ultimately threatening the stability of systems we depend upon for clean air, fresh water, and food security. Among the most immediately visible impacts is the decline of insectivorous animals, creatures that specialize in eating insects. North America has lost nearly 3 billion birds since 1970, with insectivores like swifts, swallows, and flycatchers showing the steepest declines. In Europe, populations of spotted flycatchers and yellow wagtails have plummeted by over 80%. Without sufficient insect prey, these birds face reproductive failure and starvation. The pattern extends beyond birds. Bat populations across North America and Europe have suffered dramatic declines, partly linked to reduced insect availability. In Germany's protected areas, scientists have documented 30% reductions in insectivorous bat activity over just 8 years, corresponding with local insect declines. Similarly, insect-eating reptiles and amphibians face nutritional stress as their prey base erodes. Perhaps most concerning are the implications for plant reproduction. Approximately 88% of flowering plant species depend at least partly on animal pollination, primarily by insects. As pollinators decline, many plants experience reduced seed production, potentially leading to gradual population decreases that may take decades to become apparent. A 2019 study in New Jersey found that pollinator limitations had reduced seed production in over 60% of the wild plant species examined. Agricultural systems face similar challenges. Of the 107 leading global crop types, 75% depend on animal pollinators for optimal yield or quality. The annual contribution of wild and managed pollinators to global crop production exceeds $500 billion. As these pollinators diminish, farmers increasingly report pollination deficits requiring costly interventions, like managed honeybee importation or even hand pollination in extreme cases. Below ground, the consequences are less visible but equally profound. Insects play critical roles in soil health by creating channels for water infiltration, incorporating organic matter, and regulating microbial communities. Their decline contributes to reduced soil fertility, decreased water retention, and increased erosion. 1 square meter of healthy soil can contain more than 10,000 individual insects and other arthropods. Their absence creates functional voids that reverberate throughout the soil food web. Decomposition processes also suffer as insects that specialize in breaking down dead plant and animal matter disappear. In tropical forests, researchers have documented decomposition rates slowing by as much as 40% in areas with experimentally reduced insect abundance. This leads to altered nutrient cycling, carbon sequestration, and soil formation, fundamental ecosystem functions that support all terrestrial life. Aquatic ecosystems experience parallel disruptions. Stream insects shred fallen leaves, making this material available to other organisms while helping process potential pollutants. Their decline results in altered stream metabolisms, reduced water quality, and compromised freshwater food webs that support fish and other vertebrates. As specialized insect species disappear, ecological networks simplify. The intricate connections between species, relationships that provide ecosystems with stability and resilience, begin to fray. Research shows that more diverse insect communities better resist invasion by pest species, more efficiently control potential outbreaks, and maintain more stable functioning when faced with environmental fluctuations. As diversity declines, these ecological insurance policies weaken. Perhaps most troubling is the potential for tipping points, thresholds beyond which ecosystem changes become difficult or impossible to reverse. Many ecological relationships exhibit non-linear dynamics, where systems can appear stable until they suddenly collapse when key components are lost. By the time such collapses become obvious to casual observers, the underlying ecological networks may already be damaged beyond easy repair. The consequences of insect decline extend far beyond natural ecosystems, threatening human well-being in ways both immediate and profound. While insects are often perceived as pests or nuisances, their disappearance represents an existential threat. To human societies that have developed within and remain dependent upon the ecological systems these creatures help maintain. Food security stands as perhaps the most direct connection between insect decline and human welfare. Pollinators affect 35% of global agricultural land, supporting the production of 75% of fruit and seed crops. Without insect pollination, yields of many nutritionally important crops, including fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, would decline dramatically. A world with severely reduced pollinator populations would see not only decreased food production, but significant nutritional deficiencies, particularly affecting vitamin A and folate intake in developing nations. A 2016 modeling study published in The Lancet estimated that a complete loss of animal pollinators would increase global deaths from non-communicable and malnutrition-related diseases by about 1.4 million annually. Even partial pollinator losses would disproportionately impact regions already struggling with food security and malnutrition, exacerbating global inequalities. Beyond pollination, insects provide crucial pest control services in agricultural systems. Natural enemies like ladybugs, lacewings, parasitoid wasps, and predatory beetles collectively prevent an estimated 70% of potential crop damage from herbivorous insects. The economic value of this natural pest control is estimated at $400 billion annually worldwide. As beneficial insect populations decline, farmers become increasingly dependent on chemical interventions, creating a costly treadmill of pesticide resistance and escalating application rates. The pharmaceutical industry also stands to lose significantly from insect extinctions. Compounds derived from insects have contributed to numerous medical breakthroughs, from antimicrobial peptides in fly larvae to analgesics in bee venom. The venom of the cone snail, for instance, has yielded a pain medication 1,000 times more potent than morphine. As insect species disappear before being studied, we potentially lose forever bioactive compounds that could address antibiotic resistance or provide novel treatments for cancer, chronic pain, and other conditions. Cultural impacts, while less quantifiable, are equally significant. Many human societies have developed deep cultural connections with insects, from the scarab beetles sacred to ancient Egyptians to monarch butterflies symbolizing the souls of departed loved ones in Mexican Dia de los Muertos celebrations. Indigenous knowledge systems often incorporate sophisticated understanding of insect ecology, knowledge that disappears along with the species themselves. Economic costs extend to tourism and recreation industries. Wildlife viewing, including butterfly gardens and firefly festivals, generates substantial revenue for many communities. The annual congregation of monarch butterflies in Mexico attracts approximately 100,000 tourists and generates millions of dollars for local economies. Recreational fishing, dependent on aquatic insects that comprise major food sources for fish, contributes over $40 billion annually to the U.S. economy alone. Perhaps most concerning are the potential impacts we cannot yet fully anticipate. Complex ecological systems contain countless interdependencies that we are only beginning to understand. The history of ecology is filled with examples of unexpected consequences following species removals. For instance, the eradication of wolves from Yellowstone triggered unforeseen changes in river morphology through cascading effects on herbivore behavior. Similar surprises likely await us as insect populations collapse. The psychological dimension of insect loss also deserves consideration. Emerging research suggests that biodiversity loss contributes to what environmentalists call solastalgia, distress caused by environmental change in one's home environment. As familiar butterflies disappear from gardens and lightning bug displays dim in summer evenings, people experience a form of grief that researchers are only beginning to document and understand. Ultimately, insect decline represents not simply the loss of particular species, but the erosion of the ecological foundations upon which human civilization has developed and continues to depend. The disappearance of these small creatures may prove to be one of the most consequential environmental changes of the Anthropocene, with implications that extend to virtually every aspect of human well-being. Despite the severity of insect declines, there remains cause for cautious optimism. Insects possess remarkable resilience. Their small size, tremendous reproductive potential, and rapid generations mean they can recover quickly under favorable conditions. Unlike many vertebrates requiring decades to rebound from population crashes, insect populations can often resurge within just a few seasons when threats are reduced. This biological reality provides a crucial window of opportunity for effective conservation action. Multiple promising solutions exist across different scales, from individual actions to systemic policy changes. At the landscape level, habitat protection and restoration represent our most powerful tools. Creating networks of protected areas, connected by habitat corridors, allows insect populations to move, mix genes, and recolonize suitable areas. The European Union's recent biodiversity strategy, which aims to protect 30% of land and sea areas by 2030, represents an important step in this direction. Agricultural reform offers perhaps the greatest potential for positive change. Agroecological approaches like diversified farming systems, integrated pest management, and organic agriculture can support agricultural productivity while maintaining space for beneficial insects. Studies demonstrate that farms employing such methods can maintain yields comparable to conventional operations while harboring up to 50% more insect species and 3 times greater abundance. Research from Sweden shows that organic farms support twice the number of butterfly species as conventional farms. Similarly, Dutch studies have documented 30% higher plant diversity and 17% more pollinators on farms, with wildlife-friendly management. These approaches don't require abandoning productivity, Rather, they harness ecological relationships to maintain yields while reducing external inputs and environmental harm. Urban areas, too, can contribute significantly to insect conservation. Cities worldwide are implementing pollinator pathways, installing green roofs, and converting manicured lawns to meadows. Research shows that properly managed urban green spaces can support surprisingly diverse insect communities, sometimes exceeding those in surrounding agricultural landscapes. These efforts simultaneously address multiple challenges, providing cooling effects in heat-stressed cities while creating habitat for insects and other wildlife. Policy interventions show growing promise. The European Union's restriction of neonicotinoid insecticides has begun to yield positive results, with studies documenting recovering wild bee populations in several member states. Meanwhile, Germany has implemented a 23-point action program specifically targeting insect conservation, including significant funding for habitat restoration and research. Technological innovations are emerging rapidly. Precision agriculture techniques allow farmers to target pest management interventions precisely, reducing collateral damage to beneficial insects. Alternative pest control methods like RNA interference offer species-specific approaches that minimize harm to non-target organisms. Meanwhile, advances in monitoring technology, from automated insect identification to environmental DNA sampling, are improving our ability to detect changes in insect populations and respond accordingly. Individual actions matter tremendously. Reducing pesticide use in gardens, planting native flowering plants, leaving portions of yards unmowed, and creating insect shelters can transform private properties into valuable habitat. Studies show that networks of well-managed residential gardens can support diverse insect communities and serve as stepping stones between larger habitat patches. Perhaps most encouraging are signs of growing public awareness and concern. Citizen science initiatives focused on insects have expanded dramatically, with projects like the Great Sunflower Project or the UK Pollinator Monitoring Scheme engaging thousands of volunteers in meaningful data collection. Media coverage of insect conservation has increased substantially since 2017, helping transform esoteric entomological concerns into mainstream environmental issues. This cultural shift may prove as important as any technological solution. Throughout history, societies have mobilized remarkable resources to address crises once they're recognized as urgent priorities. From the successful international response to the ozone hole to dramatic improvements in air and water quality following environmental legislation, we have repeatedly demonstrated our capacity to reverse environmental damage when properly motivated. The path forward requires integrated approaches across multiple sectors, combining immediate interventions to protect vulnerable populations with longer-term systemic changes to address root causes. It demands collaboration between farmers, scientists, policymakers, businesses, and citizens. Most fundamentally, it requires reconsidering our relationship with the natural world, recognizing that our welfare remains inextricably linked with that of even its smallest inhabitants. The silent extinction of insects represents both an ecological crisis and an opportunity to create more sustainable, resilient systems that benefit all life on Earth. The insect's future and our own depends on the choices we make today.